Hey, beautiful people, Ryan Hamer here. Hope you guys are doing well. Today, in this video, we are going to be asking the question that I normally get asked a lot. How many credit cards should I have? And before I get into the answer, I'd like to encourage each and every one of you to like, share, and subscribe. And if you got value out of this video, please leave a comment and tell me what you thought or what you learned from this video. It'll help me with the algorithm just to show that there's some activity on this video. All right, without further ado, it's a trick question. How many credit cards should you have? It's actually a trick question. The reason being is I used to tell my son, we'd go out to eat and he'd ask the question, well, Dad, what should I order? What is the meal that I should order that would leave the least mess? And I would say to him, it's not about what you order, it's about how you eat. So applying it to credit cards, it's not about how many credit cards you have. It's actually about how do you use them. Use utilization. So let's talk about it. Let's get into it. You could have one single credit card with a low limit, say $500. And it is how you utilize that credit card which can boost your credit, because one single credit card is the equivalent, it's revolving credit. So it is your one revolving credit account that you will use to the best of your ability to make sure that you can get a credit increase later on with good usage, B, show that you can pay the minimum payment on time, and C, show that you can control your card. Show that you can go months without having to use it a lot or burn up the whole limit, right? So now let's just take that you can do everything I've taught you guys about credit cards, everything I've taught you guys about revolving credits can be done with a single credit card. That's why when you come out of bankruptcy or you come out of a consumer proposal or you're just starting out, you're a newcomer to the country and you're just starting out your credit journey, what do I usually tell you? To begin your credit journey, to start your credit journey, to help your kids out with their credit journey if they cannot get the credit card on their own, because it's always like this. Sometimes it's like getting a job, right? You say, well, how do I get a new job? How can I get a job if I don't have experience? How do you get a credit card if you have no credit? So chances are what happens is you'll end up getting a secured credit card and you'd have to apply all the principles and all the basics with that credit card. Doesn't matter whether it's a small limit or what have you, the same principles apply. So if you got a $500 limit or a $1,000 limit, it's the same thing. Now, the reason why I mention this, and I'm spending a little bit of time on that, is because what happens if you end up with 5 cards? And you'll see people that have 5 credit cards, 10 credit cards, or sometimes even more. It's the ability to juggle and manage those credit cards which comes into play. So if you know how to juggle those 10 credit cards, and when I say juggle, I simply mean use the cards effectively. There are lots of times where people have cards and they don't use the cards effectively, and they end up with large balances on their cards. So you may have somebody, with that's a shopaholic and they have issues. They buy shoes all the time, or they like to go to, I don't know, I'm just talking, maybe they buy lottery tickets or something like that. For whatever they use their credit cards for, and they run up the limit. The issue is your ability to be able to pay off those cards in full each month, make that minimum payment, and ensure that when the credit card reporting statement date comes around, that you are drastically under the limit or have no balance, or you've at least made the minimum payment and you're showing that kind of activity on the card. What happens if you have to do that 10 times for 10 different cards? And it also depends on your income. If you do not have the income to handle the capacity, the 10 credit card capacity, then you're going to be in big trouble, especially if you use those cards wildly. So there is no problem with having 10 cards if you use them effectively and you handle the three criteria that I mentioned. Same with 5 cards. So we run into 3 things, right? The amount of cards that you have, the credit limit on each card. And 3, your capacity, your financial capacity to manage and handle those limits on each card. So if you don't have the ability to handle those limits, then maybe you start out with 1 and then work your way up to 2 and then to 3 and then to 4. Start up gradually. And if you show that you have the ability to use a single card effectively, regardless of the balance, then you will be more apt to be provided with an opportunity to apply for a higher credit limit. You might be offered that, or you might be granted a card with another provider. Because when you mess up on one card, it can affect your other cards. Some credit cards have a clause in them where it's called universal default. So if you default on one card, something that's not even related to them, then you might even see, sometimes they talk, sometimes they update your credit bureau report to reflect that you've missed a payment or you didn't do this or you didn't do that. And then other credit card issuers will be like, hey, maybe we should jack up her interest too. Or maybe we should claw down his limit on this card. So keep in mind that how you utilize one card, it certainly affects the other. Keep in mind that, again, credit is a privilege. It certainly is not a right. And you have the ability to drastically affect your future by how you handle it right now. So again, you can do great things with a single credit card. And it can also open up your opportunities to have other cards, get approved for other cards, to be offered other credit cards. So keep that in mind. Also, when it doesn't matter if you have a lot of credit cards either. Just make sure that you do use them, but use them effectively. If you have cards that you don't really want to use, then what you do is you make sure that you at least make one purchase within the year or whatever. Make sure you check the fine terms, or make sure you check the terms of that card. And it might say you have to use it at least one time for the year or what have you. And then you do that. So at least you're showing activity, because you don't want to have 10 cards and then have them have like 5 cards dormant. And I understand that's entirely possible, because you might end up with a travel card, or you might end up with an Amex that's got high rates and stuff like that you don't really want to use. And you might end up with a gas card or a department store card. And the reason why you end up having these particular cards is because there might have been a particular feature that you were offered, or maybe you just applied for it when they were giving it to you or whatever, and that's why you have the card, but it's not something that you would use on a regular basis. Why I always recommend you being very particular with regards to the card that you use is because certain cards have certain benefits. Of course, when you use a bank issued card, of course, you want to look favorable within the bank, and you want to be offered a higher limit from the bank, and you want to make sure that you take care of those particular issuers the best. You want to treat them like they're golden, right? Because it opens up the door for other things. Not saying that you should treat one card better than the other, but I'm saying that you should treat one card more than the other. And when I say treat, I'm talking about make sure that you use the card more than the other, because you'll get more out of that particular card than you would like a card that's just your generic vanilla card, or let's just say a prepaid card. A prepaid card where you're responsible for putting money down on that card, and then you're able to utilize that card accordingly. The reason why that particular card is kind of frowned upon is because it may have a lot of fees and stuff like that associated with it. And I understand that if you're just starting out, or if you have